Hey everybody, and welcome once again, and this is going to be one of the final Hollywood Hills shows that we actually put out for the 2020 season. So we missed you guys last weekend because we were so focused in on getting the full edits and productions and all the elements that happen behind the scenes after you guys go back home and wash your kit and wash your bikes and get everything ready. It's quite a tough process for me and the boys from LiveX to get it going. So we gave ourselves a little bit of a gap from Hollywood Hills last week to make sure that we could get the full productions out. But now we're ready to come back into studio with you guys for Hollywood Hills. And this week's show is a very special one. It's very rare that we get to do a full championship wrap-up, but this time we've decided to focus in once again, staying with the GXCCs, one of the few tours that actually survived lockdown and were able to go full race package. Even though you guys only raced 5 rounds of the series, it was still enough to crown our Northern Regions and our club champions. And this is the Hollywood Hills LiveX Champions show from GXCC. So these are the guys that did the best of everyone out there, and 1 or 2 of these championships were only decided by 1 point. I like these championships when they're tight like this. There was no room for error this season, so welcome to your champions. Let's start things out with the quad racing category and the fairer sex. So this time around, Marty Backfisher managed to back up her championship that she took in 2019 when things came down to the final round between her and Gnarly Carly. This time around, Gnarly Carly was a no-show for the most part of the season, meaning that Marty had to just simply get the job done. And she didn't wrap up the championship with 1 round to go like a lot of the guys thought she might, but she managed to still walk away as a 2-time champion. So once again, Marty Backfisher for the 421 Racing Squad is your ladies quad racing champion. Congrats from us. In the Masters category, it looked like Brian Herbst might have been able to chase away his demons. He had a lot of mechanicals last year, and this time around he switched across to a stock version of the Yamaha to try and stay away from those problems. But for some reason, that curse and that black cloud followed Brian around, and it meant that he just couldn't get the points going the whole way through. A surprise to see Philip Boyce bring the pain early on in the season, and then by rounds 2 and 3, it was obvious he was going to be the man to beat. He took his form the whole way forward. He won 4 rounds out of 5, and he managed to wrap up the championship at the final round on a borrowed bike out in the mud at Dalmas. So from us here, from the GXCC guys and here at Hollywood Hills, Philip Boyce is your GXCC quad racing champion in the Masters category, and a great job done too. He's going to have a hard time of it hanging onto that plate for next year though. You can watch out. Everyone's going to be gunning for him. Then in the Q2s, it looked like David Stratum was setting himself up to nail down the championship. Problems in the early stages gave the advantage to Ati Simon, and then David looked like he was building pace. But then David also suffered a singular mechanical problem which dropped him way out of the championship. And then it left it a 2-horse race. So coming into the final 2 rounds, it was looking like a straight up fight between CD Goosen and Ati Simon. Ati was a no-show at the final round, meaning that CD didn't have it all his own way. He had to go into a fight with David Stratum, but by getting 2nd place on the day, CD Goosen finally gets his championship. He was desperate for that, as was David Stratum, who, between them, they both haven't nailed down a championship yet. So CD is first to the gate, so CD gets his Q2 championship, and David's going to have to wait another year for that one. But CD Goosen is your Q2 champion in 2020. And then in the Q1s, it was very much a 3-horse race at the beginning of the season, where Busman was dominating the opening rounds and 2nd places, but with mechanical problems falling the way of Gideon Jacobs. Same situation with Keenan. He was having mechanical issues, but Keenan started to come on strong towards the end of the season, was carrying momentum forward. But the tallies of 2nds and 3rds, and when he wasn't winning, he was getting good numbers on the plate, was the story of Gideon Jacobs this season. He pretty much arrived at the final round, able to wrap up the championship with 1 lap, and that's exactly what he did. There was only 3 guys on the gate. Gideon did 1 lap, wrapped up the championship, and left Keenan to go out and take the final win in the Q1s, but of course having to settle for 2nd in the championship. So once again, taking it back, and it seems like a long time since he's been able to wrestle a number 1 plate back onto his bike, but now on the Yamaha and taking Yamaha's first championship in a very long time for the quads is once again Gideon Jacobs, your Q1 champion. Then let's focus in on our junior classes. So the junior numbers were very good the whole way through the championship season, and it's always great, especially in the 50s and the 65s. They are the future and they're going to come through, and the older kids on the 85 juniors and seniors will be the kids that progress very quickly through into the big numbers. Let's start things out with the 50 cc's. The beginning of the season was all about Derek Milan. He seemed to have the form going forward, and it was a couple of second places and first between himself and Matty Mayer. That was the two-horse race in rounds 1 and 2 before lockdown happened. And then during lockdown, it looked like Matty Mayer found a little bit of extra form because he came out really, really strong. And then by the time we went racing for round number 4, unfortunately, a pre-race training incident forced Milan out of the championship, which meant it was all about Matty Mayer, just carrying good form, bringing home podiums every single time. If he wasn't winning, he was on the box, but most of the time he was winning, and that's the point as well. If you don't win, you've got to bring home high finishes, and it's a lesson that Matty Mayer learned early on. He was pushed hard in the late stages of the game by Jean-Luc van der Westhuizen, who's always strong in the early laps and the whole shot, and then a Johnny come lately to the championship, which was Wilco Deploy coming across from motocross. But the long game went to Matty Mayer, and he is your brand new 50cc junior champion, and just in time as well, because he's about to jump up next year into the 65 gate. Brings us nicely into the 65s then. This was a wild run. It really was, because we had Damien Fenter at the beginning of the season who was unstoppable at rounds 1 and 2, and he was taking big wins as well. It wasn't just a win, it was big numbers and big gaps. The kids that were chasing down for second place was most of the time Bruno Niebuhr. And Bruno is a long game player, and that's what we like about this kid. He's very strong and consistent. Again, like Matty Mayer, if he doesn't win, he's bringing home seconds and thirds and backing it up. Then when we came out of lockdown, it appeared that Fenter had made the decision to jump up into the junior 85s, leaving it wide open then for Bruno to just smash wins and get the job done. And that was the story. Second half of the season was all about Bruno Niebuhr for Ruban Racing, getting it done. And he hadn't wrapped up the title just before we went into Delmas, but with a win at the final round, he cemented that number 1 plate. So Bruno Niebuhr is going to be hard to beat next year if he stays on the 65s. I haven't spoken to Mama yet to find out if he's going to jump up, but he is Bruno Niebuhr, your 65cc racing champion. Then the junior 85s, and this kid was unstoppable the whole way through the championship. Not exactly a clean plate, but one of the riders that was extremely close to getting a clean plate done. He was very, very, very tough to beat on every single gate that he went out on. That was before lockdown and after lockdown. He took the final round of the season out at the mudfest that was Delmas. And it's Keanu Visser who is your champion in the junior 85s, and just in time as well, because if you check out this footage, you can see how big he is. He was dominating that bike, and as with a lot of the champions that are just about to move up, they kind of outsize their bikes and they're about to jump up. So Keanu Visser, a very well played champion and a very well played championship as well, on a gate that's very busy as well. But none more busy than this gate as well, and that is the senior 85s. There was about 5 kids that could have won the championship, but as always, the cream does rise to the top. In the early stages of the championship, it was all about Baby Bester, and I've got to be careful about calling him that because he is growing up very quickly, but it's tough because we've always known him as a little dude. He is getting taller, he is getting bigger, and what he is getting is faster, and that's Curtis Bester. He was dominating the early part of the championship, but we saw Troy, the Destroyer, holding him in line, and where he was getting firsts and seconds, it was just a 2-horse race. Then during lockdown, I don't know what the kid was eating, but he jumped up like 1.5 feet. And when we came back from lockdown, he was super tall and somehow able to muscle the bike around much better and take a couple of wins to close things down in the championship. It actually came down to a couple of points in it as well between Bester and Johnson when they walked into the lineup to start the mud race at Delmas. Now, even though Curtis Bester got the final win of the season, a second place was still good enough for Johnson to get the job done and win the GXCC Club Championship. But the early running was all by Bester, so he's going to walk away with the Northern Regions Championship. So that's cool that the two buds that have very much grown up together will share a championship plate going forward into next year. But it is definitely time for the Destroyer to jump up to a 125. He is just like an ape on a tricycle out there, and he definitely needs a bigger bike. But it is the Destroyer, Troy Johnson, who is your GXCC Club Champion with the Northern Regions plate going to Baby Bester. So that's our quads and our juniors. Let me take a breath now as we get ourselves ready to go into the motorcycle classes. So motorcycle classes, we'll climb the ladder on this one. Let's start things out with our Pro-Am category races. So in the ladies, the Pro-Am ladies had a very small gate, but there was one dominating factor the whole way through, and that was Marie Ellis. In fact, the gate did tend to shrink into the second half of the season. So most of the time, Marie was on the track with the rest of the ladies. So she did have some big challenges, but it also showed that she improved her pace and her lap times did pick up in the second half of the season. So Remarie, great job for you and the Rubine Racing squad. Then we start going into the Pro-Am categories, climbing the ladders, starting out with the Pro-Am OR3s. That was Nathan Godrich. Godrich has been all dominating the whole way through. Another rider who didn't take wins at every single round, but when he didn't win, he was on the box and smashing good numbers. So great to see him get his big number 1 plate. He'll be flirting with jumping up into the pro categories for next year as well. In the Pro-Am OR2s, 2-horse race the whole way through the championship. Early running was all about Jean Niebuhr, but he was starting to get closed down in the later stages of the championship by Dion van der Merwe. Dion is a new blood to cross-country racing, only getting picked up by the CIT squad in the early stages of this year. And second became a couple of firsts at the end of the season. Jean Niebuhr did hang on to it, but by 1 point. So Jean Niebuhr and Rubine Racing, that's 3 championships for those guys, so that's good numbers for them, and it was a close run thing indeed. In the Pro-Am OR1, the big bangers, very tough to beat one guy out there on the gate, and that was Jaco Janse van Rensburg. He was pushed the whole way to the line, though, incredibly enough, by Nick Wells from the Vans Racing squad. Nick got faster as the season got longer, but the consistent form was held by Jaco Janse van Rensburg the whole way through, and he will take the number 1 plate and possibly look at moving up into the pro categories for next season. So let's now move up into the pro categories, starting out with the ladies. So on the early part of the season, when all the ladies were on the gate, the whole shots went to Megan Jonker the whole way through, and the wins. Couple of times she did get beaten on the season, but the most consistent and top finishing, point scoring, and very clever decisions. Sometimes when she wasn't feeling her best, she had to roll out of it, but when she was feeling good, she hammered the nail every single time. Megan Jonker gets her big number 1 plate for the Pro GXCC Ladies Gate. Then moving into the age group categories. 2-horse race as always, but it became a 3-horse race towards the end of the season for the Masters category. Wayne Farmer always going to be the man to beat, but in the early running, it was a flip and a toss of the coin between himself and Peter Hall. Peter Hall seemed to roll out towards the end of the season and wasn't in every single race, so it became almost a formality for Wayne to wrap up the championship, but during the off-season and the late part of the season as well, he had some massive back injuries and went in for 2 surgeries. In fact, we worked out that he had to line up and complete the last race to be able to get his title in Northern Regions and GXCCs. And even though he was injured, Wayne Farmer is once again your GXCC Masters title holder with the big number 1 plate. So well done for toughing that one out, Wayne, and we wish you the best of speedy recoveries. I know he's gone for another slice and dice recently as well, so hopefully he's back up and on the line. Then moving forward into the Seniors Gate. Now the Seniors Gate was a story where we were looking for the perfect season because it looked like it was heading that way. Last year, it was Wade Blau and Brucey just banging bars the whole way through the season, and whoever didn't win got second and vice versa. This time around, it was out the gate and wins. That's 4 wins for Wade Blau as he went undefeated. Now, he was looking to go what I call the golden season, whereas every single race you enter, you do not get beaten. And it's true if you count his categories as well, because for 4 rounds of the cross-country nationals and 4 rounds of the GXCCs, Wade Blau was unbeaten. Then at the final round, he decided to come and race with the pros, and can you believe it, lined up on the OR1 Pro Bangers and got 3rd overall in the day. That's how classy this guy is, but not counting what happened at the last race, Wade Blau is your, once again, GXCC champion in 2020 and the reigning national champion as well. Tough, fast dude. And then the high schools basically can be summed up in one word: domination. Maddie Wilson absolutely creamed them the whole way through the season, so strong in fact that he was able to wrap up the championship with 1 round to go and test his mettle against what's going to be his gate for next year, the OR3s. Maddie Wilson cleaned house completely to hammer the nail and get his GXCC club, regional and national title all in 1 season. Let's get into the pro categories then, into the OR3s. Reigning champion Peter Karam had the mark on his back, and he had everyone coming at him. He had Eric Merry, he had the devastator Devon Smith, he had the Johnny Come Lately in the championship who missed out round number 1, and that was Peltzer. Peltzer, realistically, if you looked at the numbers, could have been a big spoiler in the championship if he'd have come good and actually raced that first round. But Karam is a championship player. He took a couple of wins on the season, and the rest of the time he was bagging points. Karam is now your 2-time champion, looking for the 3-peat in 2021, riding out of Roost KTM. So that's a huge story for him. In the OR2s, last year was a two-horse race as well, where JJ was going bar to bar and elbows up with the brawler. JJ decided to focus on other aspects of racing, marriage, life, and all those cool things this year. Brawler was out there once again. He was in dominating form the whole way through the championship, but it looked like Taki was coming good, and he did come good as well. He built pace, he built momentum, and eventually was putting the pressure on the Brawler towards the end of the season. The gap was too big though, and the good work had been done by Brawler at the beginning of the season, and Ian Rawle is once again your OR2 champion. And watch out for some news as well. Hollywood Hills is going to be dropping a big news flash, as Brawler has got some big news about new wheels, new colors, and new sponsors he's working with going forward into 2021, so watch this space. And that brings us into the OR1 Pro Big Bangers. Now, at the beginning of the season, there was a couple of big surprise packages on the line where we had Mikey Pentecost, a former factory star, and we had Miller. Same story for him. Factory Yamaha, factory KTM. Both of them took a couple of years off. Both of them came back as privateers, and they smashed huge numbers at the beginning of the season. Consistency was coming in from the Dart, who had now moved across to a KTM after years on a Yamaha, and Delport. Then, come out of lockdown, no show for Miller and no show for Pentecost, meaning it was going to be all about Dart and obviously Vaynot. Then Dart couldn't get across the border. They couldn't build the ramp big enough to come across from Botswana. So Delport had the championship points lead going into round 3, held the championship points lead into round 4, but it started to look like it was closing up because Ruan Smith was coming on super strong, and he moved across onto the smoker. Then the final round, it was literally a two-horse race with 1 point in it. So whoever finished the highest of Delport and Smitty were going to walk away as the title holder. There were 4 laps to be raced on the day. On lap 4, Vaynot Delport had the advantage, and a big advantage as well, a huge gap over Ruan Smith. But mechanical issues, followed by a tire peeling off the rim, put Delport out of it. And surprise, surprise, it was Ruan Smith that came across the line in a high enough position to claim the title. Now, a few years back, he claimed the title on a 300 Sherco, so he is now joining Dart as a 2-time OR1 Big Banger champion in the GXCCs. And that is the season wrapped up. If you can believe it, that is all of our champions crowned. That's everything wrapped up nice and tightly in a bow, and we cannot wait to see what 2021 holds. We're going to be announcing a couple of the dates. I know the GXCCs have already put out their provisional dates, so that's going to pop up right now. So mark those in your calendar, but they're provisional, so they may change. We're waiting for sign off on the national dates, which just came through as well. So hopefully everything starts to tighten up nicely, but we know for a fact it's going to be a perler of a season. This COVID thing should be done and dusted pretty soon, but still stay safe out there, social distance, wear your mask and wash your hands as you are required. But from us here at Hollywood Hills, thank you for hanging tough with us. We hope you've enjoyed everything we brought to you before, during, and after lockdown. And we guarantee you, we are on the line with you once again in 2021. God bless, have a great Christmas, and we can't wait to see you as the new season rolls around the corner. Cheers.